Good morning, everyone. Perek Beis Mishna Vav, Chapter 2, Mishna 6. Now, in yesterday's Mishnah, we had an argument between Reb Meir and Reb Yehuda where a person is buying, let's say, figs. According to Reb Meir, the mere fact that he's buying the figs, they are not yet processed. But the mere fact that he's buying the figs, that alone is Kaveh Meiser. That alone sets the obligation of Meiser that you can't snap from it. Reb Yehuda said, if you take it one at a time, then the fact you're buying it is not Kaveh Meiser. But if you put two of them together, that is a pile of sorts. That is enough of a processing of these figs to say that the purchase of them will be Kaveh Meiser. So now the Mishnah says like this. When it says to his friend, take this Isser. Isser was a coin for 10 figs that I will choose, which means he is going to go and pick those figs that he wants. And he is going to be eating them one at a time. He can choose and eat. This is going to follow even Reb Meir's opinion from before, that when you were buying from someone the figs, or Reb Meir said when you buy them, it is Kaveh Meiser, because as we mentioned yesterday, Reb Meir only says that when it is the seller who is picking the fig and giving it to you. But when the buyer is doing it, even Reb Meir says one at a time is not going to be Kaveh Meiser, even though you're purchasing it. So here the person says, I'm choosing it. So it's the buyer that's going and picking off the fruit. Again, you're selling it, it's connected to the tree. You're saying that I want to buy with this Isser 10 figs that I will choose. It's the buyer who's picking the figs from the tree. And therefore, Reb Meir would agree that as long as you are doing one at a time, you can choose and eat and snack. If you're going to take two at a time, then already, once you put two together, that's a pile. We had yesterday, even according to Yehuda, you have to then take off the trimmers and mice before you snack. But here, as long as you're taking one at a time, you're okay. Or let's say the case is, he says, he's coming to buy grapes, and he says, I'm giving you an Isser for the cluster that I will choose. He can take off a grape at a time and eat. If he takes off a grape and takes off one grape at a time and eats it, that he may do. Again, in these cases, we are saying, according to everyone, that there's no processing. It's the buyer who is doing the picking, and therefore, as long as he's doing it one at a time, it's not Kaveh Meiser, and he can snack. But again, it's taught, but it says, but you have to do it begarga. That means you take off one at a time. If you take two at a time, let's say you take the whole cluster off, then that's considered a pile, and that would obligate you because you have purchased it. It will obligate you to separate meisers before you can even snack from it. Beriman Shavarli, he says, I'm giving you an Isser for the pomegranate that I will choose. Parit v'eichel. You pick off each seed and you eat. If you pick off the whole pomegranate, or 2 seeds at a time, that is considered a pile. If you take off one pomegranate at a time and eat one pomegranate seed, you eat one pomegranate seed at a time, okay, that's one at a time. It's not Kaveh Meiser, the fact that you are purchasing it. But if you take off the whole pomegranate, or you take 2 pomegranate seeds, that is the equivalent of a pile, like we said before, by the grapes, and then you couldn't snack unless you separated. I'm giving you an Isser for the melon that I'm going to choose. You can slice and eat. Now, you cannot eat a watermelon at one time. It's too big. You have to slice it. And therefore, we look at a watermelon like the pomegranate season, like the grapes, but just with slices. If you take a slice and eat one slice at a time, then snacking is permissible. 2 slices is already going to be considered like a pile. Together, it is. 2 slices together is like a pile. You won't be able to even snack until you separate shumas and meisers. So make sure I'm not missing anything here. Yeah. Okay, we're good. Now, Aval, Imam Alay, but let's say the case is the following. He says to him, Be'esrim ta'enim elu, I'm giving you an Isser for these 20 figs. He specifies the figs. Now, again, we're talking about they're still attached to the tree, but he's specifying, I want these 20 figs. B'shnei eshkoilis elu, I want these 2 clusters. B'shnei remainim elu, I want these 2 pomegranates. B'shnei avaticham elu, I want these 2 melons. Oichal kadarka yapater, you could eat in your regular way of eating, doesn't have to be one at a time, and you're still going to be exempt from separating Shrimas and Maisris, because the purchase was done while it is attached to the ground. So that means the following. If you specify what you are buying that's attached, then right away, so what's happening is that you are acquiring it while it is attached, while it's still attached. When you specify what it is that you want to buy, then you give them the money, you give the owner the money, and those specified things that are attached become yours. So what comes out is that the purchase is taking place while the produce is still attached to the ground. Everybody agrees at that point, purchasing will not be kaveh l'maiser. Purchasing will not set it to the obligation of maiser to the point you can't snack from it. Still attached is way too early. There's no processing whatsoever there to consider. And it's not even close to processing to be considered. Even Reb Meir would say, even Reb Meir who doesn't say you need processing, but that far, that while it's still attached purchasing will not be kaveh l'maiser. You're purchasing this while it is still attached. So therefore, the purchase is not going to be kaveh l'maiser. And therefore, the Mishna says, you can go ahead and eat more than one at a time. Now, you may ask, but wait a minute. Okay, fine. While it's attached, the purchase won't be kaveya. But what happens when I detach it? At that point, it's detached. The thing is, though, that being that you bought it while it was attached, so now when you detach it, it's yours. If it's yours, then you're like the owner of the field. When you own a field and you have grapes, you can detach as many as you want. Nonetheless, until you could even process it, whatever processing would be, but till you bring it home, it's not kaveh l'maiser. If my plan is to bring it home, no matter what I do to it before it comes home, it will not be kaveh l'maiser. It will not become kavul l'maiser. It will not be set for maiser until it comes into my house, and I can snack and I can snack regularly until I get into the house. If you have purchased, if these fruits have become yours already when they were attached. So now when you detach them and they're already yours, you're like the owner of the field. You will be able to snack until you actually bring it to your house. And therefore the Mishnah says, you can take 2, you can take 3, whatever it is you're taking. Doesn't make a difference how much you take and how much you snack, how much you take. What would have been a pile before makes no difference. While it's connected to the ground, while it's still connected to the ground, the purchase makes no difference. The purchase isn't kaveh l'maiser. And even after you detach it, it's already yours. If it's already yours, then it's not going to become, it was already yours before you detached it was already yours. So therefore, until you bring it home to your house, you can still snack on it. In the first half of the Mishnah, it's very different, because in the first half of the Mishnah, you didn't specify which ones. You said with the ones I'm going to choose. Well, if the point is that you're purchasing the one you want to choose, then even if you give the owner the money, the seller the money, until you actually choose and pick the fruit, the acquisition doesn't take effect. It's not yours. Even if you're giving the money to him, since he didn't specify what the money is for, the acquisition does not take effect until you actually choose and pick, and not just decide on it. You have to actually take and choose that which you plan on taking, and then the acquisition will take effect on what you have picked. But then it comes out that it was not yours while it was attached to the ground. When you pick it, that's when it first becomes yours. Well, if when you pick it, the acquisition takes place, so then we say, okay, then the fact that you're acquiring it could make a difference into whether you'll be able to snack on it or not. If you take one at a time, then there's not enough processing for the acquisition to say it's kavul l'maser. But if you take two at a time, then you have a pile, then it's processed enough that we would say that the acquisition will be kaveh l'maser and you will not be able to snack on it. But that's only in the first case because the acquisition doesn't take place until after you actually pick it. But in the second half of the Mishnah, the acquisition took place while it was still connected to the ground because you specified which ones you want. At that point, the acquisition will not affect the fruit. And even after you pick it, the acquisition will not affect the fruit because since it was yours before you picked it, you're like the owner of the field. And we say that until you actually bring it home, it will not be kavul l'maiser, and until then, you can snack. We are now up to the 10th prohibition. The Chavetz Chaim says one can possibly transgress when speaking Lashon Harah. Imkam b'heyar alav b'lfnei beis din. If a person goes in front of a rabbinical court and he testifies b'devar iser b'yachidi regarding a matter of a person transgressing a prohibition and you did it by yourself. There are certain situations where two witnesses come and testify about a person that he has transgressed a certain sin, that can change that person's status regarding different things. It can make a difference to how the person will be treated. For instance, will we accept him as a witness? But if you only do that with one witness, you can't accomplish anything with that. So if you walk into Beis Din and somehow or another you testified about a person by yourself, you walked into Beis Din, they say, what do you want? And you testified. I guess that's what happened. Being that there is no purpose in what you've done, not regarding money or making an oath. Although we say that we need two witnesses to affect anything, there is an exception, and that is that if one witness is not the case, you didn't discuss any kind of monetary issue. Nor where you have the ability to go ahead and to invalidate this person from his status of kosher, his status of being considered one who is kosher and able to, let's say, testify. Okay, kosher in the sense that he is considered not invalidated. Because you're only one witness. So as one witness, you cannot change a person's status. His what's called a cheskas kashrus, his cheskas as being considered a person valid for different aspects of Jewish law. You can't change that status because you're only one witness. So all you're doing is just spreading you're just spreading bad news about him, just spreading a bad report about him. Speaking Lashon Harah. And by doing so in Beis Din, you now transgress the prohibition, alongside the prohibition of speaking Lashon Harah. You also transgress the prohibition of that one witness shall not rise up in Beis Din to testify against a person for any matter of sin or iniquity. Meaning, if it's a matter of, again, saying a person did something forbidden, not a question of trying to say does he owe any kind of money or not, but you're trying to basically testify him and change his status. You're only one witness. You can't do anything. And because of that, you're not allowed to come and do that in Beis Din. And actually, the Beis Din, originally, in earlier days when they had the power to do so, would actually give lashes to a person for doing this, because he transgressed a prohibition of the Torah. And therefore, if a person goes into Beis Din and he does this, he's done two things wrong. He has spoken Lashon Harah, and he has testified as a single witness in a manner that his testimony doesn't help, and the Torah forbids a person from doing that. Have a wonderful day.